I like lots of horsepower. In a Countach and a Diablo and a Murcielago, the engines are in backwards. This car is a big, dumb, cantankerous, expensive paperweight, and my wife is being the camera person, so I'm totally not gonna tell you how much it costs. Okay, I know, I'm crazy, but you came to this YouTube channel, and I'm gonna deliver. What's up, people? We are back with the Jabberwock Jackwagon build. Yeah, I know that name needs a little work. Anyway, the Jabberwock is in fact a Jackwagon, and we know that it will be powered by this Viper V10 engine. Now, I'm also standing here in front of the Countach body I recently picked up in a junkyard. To be clear, that is not going to be the Jabberwock Jackwagon. This is a happy coincidence. But today I want to go over this and actually talk about it because this is going to be an epic build coming up, and a lot of people were saying you should totally put a Viper engine in it, or a V12 or a rotary or an LS and everything. And the Countach, as well, the Diablos and Murcielagos and Aventadors have a very unusual drivetrain that a lot of you may not realize. So we're actually going to measure this and kind of look at the dimensions and how that works. But more interestingly, let's get on to what the Jabberwock is going to be, because in an upcoming near episode, I'm going to show you what it actually is. And to be specific, it is in fact orders of magnitude rarer than any Countach, and orders of magnitude cooler, meaner, and more exotic. Yes. And that's exactly why I need to make it into a street car. So here is, if you want to look more carefully, the 8-liter Viper V10 engine. It is a Gen 2 Viper engine, and this particular one is of the later production run that has different pistons that are more suitable for a naturally aspirated build. The earlier ones with the forged pistons are better if you want to do forced induction. For this right now, we're going to go naturally aspirated. I like the sound of that. There's going to be a lot of fun for the header design because the Jabberwock will in fact be mid-engined. And that's exactly why I have this transaxle here, which today I want to show you guys. We're going to put this up in place of how that's going to be. Currently, I'm having Kennedy Engineering actually machine me an adapter that goes between the Viper bell housing mounting flange, which is actually at the block right here. Currently, the Viper is fitted with its old bell housing from when it was a front engine car, as well as clutch and flywheel. And truthfully, I will not be using this, the clutch, or the flywheel, because I'm having a special one made, as well the adapter plate, and it's going to run a twin disc clutch instead of a single disc. And the reason being is, I like lots of horsepower, but I also like to retain reasonable street drivability. If you go with a single disc clutch, it's going to need a lot of pressure from the pressure plate and potentially some very aggressive compounds and like multi kind of puck clutch, which sucks for driving on the street. It becomes a light switch and it'll be prone to chattering. And I hate all those things, even in a race car. So by going to a 2-disc clutch, kind of similar to what I believe were in Ferrari Testarossas, I'll be able to have a nice pedal pressure, good modulation, but it'll easily be able to hold gobs of horsepower and torque. So this transaxle is out of a Porsche 996 Series 911, but it's from the twin turbo. Yes! Which means it was really expensive on eBay. And my wife is being the camera person, so I'm totally not going to tell you how much it cost. She's making faces at me right now. The more reasonably priced transaxle, which this totally is the 996 non-twin turbo one, which you can buy for in the area of $1,800 to $2,000 on eBay, and they do just fine. For a sissy engine, but that's a Viper engine. This is the twin turbo. You can put limited slip differentials in it. You can change the 6th gear and whatnot. So I want to show you guys. Here we go. Okay, maybe sweetie, if you go over there and look at it from the side, we can get a better idea. So once you get an idea, I'm going to have to move this pallet differently. So there's a number of things about this. One, watch me kill myself right now. Okay, so, and that's kind of interesting actually, because this is about the size of where the transmission bolts up. The transmission for the Viper bolts up. And this is the Porsche bell housing right here. So you can tell that the clutch that would have been for the Porsche only fits in this area, whereas the original Viper clutch is frankly a lot bigger around. That's another reason why I need twin discs, because it needs to be able to fit in this area with the input shaft. So here's something, a couple of things to make note of. The Porsche 996 is stupid, and the engine is behind the rear axles. You know, like back in the day when it was a people's car designed for Hitler and then became a hippie car in the 60s in America, because that makes sense. Yes, I'm making an air-cooled Volkswagen Beetle joke. You're welcome, 911 people. We part out your cars to make something cooler. Ha! Oh, Porsche snobs hate me right now. Don't care. We like water-cooled Porsches. Oh, that is a water-cooled Porsche. Casey, shut up. So, the Transaxle, the other thing about it is this is made for an all-wheel drive car. If you look right here, this is the output shaft that would have gone to the front differential. Now, this shaft is in fact the same shaft that goes to drive the pinion, unless I'm crazy and mistaken, which happens from time to time. If that's the case, I will let you know. Anyway, it's the same shaft that drives the pinion, and you can see the output flange starting to spin here with the differential. You could literally just let this hang out in the breeze and spin and it wouldn't hurt anything. And I started thinking like, ooh, maybe I can power a fan by it or something, which would be cool. But the problem is this spins with the speed of the car and the diff, not the speed of the engine. So it speeds faster the faster you go, which really wouldn't help doing active aerodynamics, which is a huge bummer, I know. But anyway, when I do rebuild this, I'm probably going to put a limited slip differential in it, refresh the bearings, synchros if it needs it, in case an idiot was driving it, you never know, and change the 6th gear to make it taller so it's awesome on the highway and not just buzzing. And at which point I can get rid of this prop shaft and then cap the transaxle off right here. Here's the bigger mount. Now, let's get to something else. If you look at it from the side, you'll notice here that the output flange to drive the CVs and the half shafts is at a lower level currently than the input shaft of the transmission right here. This is the input shaft, if you can see that, which is also in line with the crankshaft of the engine. Now, these are down low. That's typically how it is in a street car, generally speaking, but not as good in a race car. And the reason being is, you know, your wheels are tall, right? And these are the shafts that go to the center of your wheels. So if this is down low, that means your transmission is up higher and your engine is up higher. We want low center of gravities in race cars. So what you do, and this works out beautifully because we're going to put the engine where it should be in front of the rear wheels instead of behind it. So it's like a slot car. If any of y'all played with HO slot cars when you were a kid and you take out the rear axle and flip it over and you flip the ring gear, then you can drive it on the track backwards, same thing. So if the engine's going to go mid-engine instead of rear engine, you actually invert the transaxle. And I hope this isn't full of fluid and it's going to pee all over me right now. Yes. This is totally not difficult at all, and I'm totally not going to destroy my hand. Yes, don't hurt yourself, idiot. Okay. Is this working? Lady, come back. Yes, I am awesome. Okay, close enough. You guys get the idea. So in doing this, you have to change the oil level a little bit, and suddenly drains become fills, and then you need different ways to drain it and such, and then you need to count how many quarts to get the correct amount because your height plug is no longer correct. But now you can see the output flange here is nicely above the center line of the crankshaft and the input shaft. The transaxle will function just fine this way. It does put the shifter linkages stuff on the right instead of the left. Really doesn't matter. In fact, I think I'm going to make this car right-hand drive and right-hand shift, so that actually works out better. Also, the Viper has a starter here that mounts to the block, and then the Porsche could mount its starter to the transaxle here. So I have two options with how to start it, and also, which is kind of nice, the mount for the transaxle in the back here is also loose as heck. That is busted up. We're gonna make that better. This can be really nice to tie this into framework if need be, because I will give you another hint. The Jabberwock is going to have a massive wang, and by wang I mean wing, and it center mounts. So I'm going to need something in this area to mount it to. So this will tie in nicely to that effect. But I just wanted to show you guys. I'll get the adapter here soon enough. Kennedy's a number of weeks off on making the mounting plate, and I told them, and even longer in getting the special clutch and the flywheel done. So I told them, please get the mounting plate, the adapter for the bell housings to connect the engine and transaxle done first. And when you get that done, send it out. That way I can at least attach the transaxle to the engine and start using this for mock-up and making the chassis and showing you guys the body. And then when the clutch comes, I can simply disassemble it and put the clutch in and stuff like that. Also, this transaxle, there's going to be some rebuilding I'm going to want to do to it. Hopefully it's not blown up. This particular 996 twin turbo had about 50,000 miles on it. So hopefully the person driving it wasn't a complete idiot and wrecked it. And that's basically it. But right now, what I'd really like to do is, since a lot of you have all talked about engine swaps and talking, you know, about what fits and what works, the thing about engines are, you can't just stick any engine in any car. So right now, let's measure the Countach body up and see that, and just physically see how this would fit. And I also want to explain to you the nature of how Lamborghini transmissions work. Now, as a note, I want you to look here. And here's a teaser for anybody that's interested in Genius Garage. The Genius Garage IndyCar up here, we're actually going to be getting that down, and that's going to be the big Genius Garage project this year. We are going to convert it, believe it or not, I know the internet's probably going to lose its mind right now, to be powered by a Hayabusa engine. No joke, because if you do that, you're going to be dropping hundreds of pounds out of the car, making it much lighter weight. And a Hayabusa motor is already making the better part 200 horsepower. And with turbo, you can make 300 to 400 horsepower. Now, the reason I'd like to do that is this car is a big, dumb, cantankerous, expensive paperweight that few people on the planet can drive. And that's not really very much fun. It's been sitting there collecting leaky roof rain and dirt, and that's no good. So I think it'd be a great engineering exercise to ditch the engine and electronics, which, since it's blown up, maybe someday we can rebuild and do something with. But by powering it and reconfiguring it to run with a Hayabusa, we can do more with it. We can use it as a test bed. And since it'll be like the most biggest and insane Formula SAE car on steroids, if we find an appropriate venue, the students can even drive it safely and smartly. Because the truth about a lot of those Genius Garage cars, they're all super race cars, so you can't even legally put people in the cars because they're not licensed for it. But in this circumstance, I think it's good for engineering, so they get their cake and eat it too. But I say that because there's so few engines you can actually put in there because the nature of how the transaxle is designed, and it's a stressed member. And with regard to the Countach, it's the same kind of thing. So the Jabberwock, this Viper engine is enormous. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure it from right here, and that point is right above where the bell housing of the block is. And we're going to measure it to the front of the ancillary type things. So from back there to the front of the pulleys, we're right about 34.5 inches in length. Now I know that an LS V8 to approximately the front of the pulleys is going to be right about 5 inches shorter than this Viper motor. And also you've got the, if you want to come over here and look, you've also got your water pump. I'm not sure if that's the inlet. That's the inlet. That's the intake for the water pump that sticks out even further. So we're about 35 inches here. Something else that's important, let's go measure this right now. If you notice, your critical dimension for a transaxle is the distance from the center line of the output flange to your mating surface, which in this circumstance is right about 8.5 inches. However, there is going to be an adapter plate in between this. So let's go ahead and say it's going to be, I'm going to be 1.25 inches thick aluminum. So we had what, 8.5 or so, let's just say 8 3/4. Yeah, it is 8 3/4, make my life easier. You'll have 10 inches from the center line of the output flange that drives the rear wheels to the mounting surface. And where I'm going with this is, and this is going to be a key dimension for looking at this, and why the Jabberwock is so special, because the car is bigger and nastier than a Countach to fit a monster engine. So we got 10 inches from the wheel to the surface mount, the center line there, plus another, I think 35.5 inches we said, or about 35 inches. So 10 plus 35, I ain't no rocket surgeon or math magician, but I think it's about 45 inches. So here's the deal. You got 45 inches from where the half shafts go to drive the rear wheels to whatever is in front of you, which in a mid-engine car is usually the cockpit. So come on over and let's check out this Countach body. By the way, this is in fact a replica, and the only reason I have it and like it is because it's really well done, and in the 80s it was molded off a real car, which means I have something that represents Marcello Gandini's masterpiece, but I can do whatever I want with it and make a sweet race car that'll be faster than a normal Countach. Yes! I also bought it for $5 grand, so that's quite nice, more palatable. So, and the other thing is, with all of these hoods and trunks and frunks and everything on it, they hardly have any compound curves, so I can easily replicate this out of lightweight aluminum. Okay, so come on back here. We're going to measure this together, if you look in there and see what's going on. Okay, guys, so right about here, and can you see down in there, sweetie? Okay, so here's the frame. Okay, this is your cross member. Now, this is an old Sienna kit, but right about here, this is where the center line to drive the rear wheels needs to be, which if we measure from this frame and bulkhead, right there, we're looking at the center line needs to be 2.5 inches ahead of this. Now some people with half shafts will cheat a little and angle them forwards or backwards if need be. That's not ideal because the CVs are wearing more, and the more power you put in it, the worse it is. So you don't want to get away with too much. So for the sake of this right now, I'm just going to go ahead and say 2.5 inches is where that has to start. Now, if you notice right there, there's the bulkhead. That's the firewall into the cockpit, and the seats will be on the other side pretty darn close. So I'm going to measure from that point in space. Okay, so we said 45 inches for the Viper engine, right? From the center line. So if I put 45 inches right where the bulkhead is, that means, if you look, can you look way up in there? See that right there? It goes right under that little hump right there, and that's the front of the pulleys. That's not even where your water inlet is. So if you want to go over there on that side and look in the cockpit of what we've got, maybe look in the window here, I'm going to point. That means the front of the pulleys of the Viper engine would be coming to this point, and your water manifold will be coming to this point. That's the front of the engine. This seat needs to be right here. Frankly, putting that engine and transaxle in this car is not very realistic for actually having to seat reasonable sized adults in it. And the Countach was already not a large car to begin with when they're real. So you ask, well, Casey, Countach's and Diablos had a V12 engine. How did they fit? Great question. Come on back here, I'll tell you. The transaxle over there, if you look at it again, sweetie, that's more of a classic longitudinal inline transaxle. It's called a transaxle because it combines the transmission and the differential to drive it. The truth of the matter is, a Countach and a Diablo don't have a transaxle. They have a transmission. Whoa, so how does that work? Well, it's not like a Toronado transmission they put in stupid kit cars and stuff. Come on over from the back and let's look together. In a Countach and a Diablo and a Murcielago, the engines are in backwards. I'm not kidding, they're in backwards. The clutch side of the engine and the bell housing is in the forward of the car. And all the ancillaries, such as that right there, are on the back. And I'm going to show you by pointing at this, you can stay where you're at. So in a Countach or Diablo, Murcielago, the engines are in backwards, just like this one is oriented now to this body. All of the belts and pulleys and stuff are on the back, which is nice because on a real car, you can access them real close back here and work on them pretty easy. But replacing the clutch in a Diablo or Countach is horrible, horrible, stupid, bad, annoying Italian engineering where they don't care about people or getting things done quickly. I said my piece, I'm moving on. Ferrari's just as bad, if not worse. Okay, because Ferrari has timing belts. Okay, so, yes, so here's the thing. Here's how it works. Come on over here a little bit. I need you all to imagine, okay? Imagine this is not a transaxle and there's no output flanges here. It's just a normal transmission, okay? Like you'd see in a street car, and it's got a shifter. So in a Countach, the transmission is ahead of the engine. And then the shifter's way out here on a stock. So when you're in a Countach, Diablo, or Murcielago, the transmission is actually between the driver and the passenger, like underneath your elbow, and then the shifter's way out here on a stock like that. And then, and now this is really cool, you know how this has a prop shaft to be all-wheel drive to go to the front wheels on the 911? Same thing when they went all-wheel drive on Diablos and Murcielagos. It has the shaft going up to a differential in the front. And I know you guys are all freaking out saying make an all-wheel drive Countach. Well, it's kind of a pain in the butt. But how it works is when those cars have the transmission in front of the engine, it has a transfer case internal with a shaft. The shaft runs through the oil pan of the engine, and they mount a differential right back here as part of the oil pan assembly. It's a big cast aluminum piece. So in that circumstance, if, notice I say if, because this is not the Jabberwock, Jackwagon crazy build I'm doing, it's going to be way cooler, so you got to come back for it. But come on back, we'll measure this one last time and showcase how that could potentially fit. So the Viper engine, from the bell housing to the ancillaries, is 35 inches long. Okay. So if the ancillaries would need to start about here because you'd have a differential somewhere down here, that would mean it would have to be 35 inches from right about in this area. So boom, right there. And you could just barely do it. You could almost kind of, not real easily and still be squeezed in there too much, fit a Viper engine in here. Viper engines are kind of physically big, another 10 cylinders, but it's a massive amount of displacement. So it could kind of be done. But the other truth of the matter is you're already making something that is not an exact replica, nor is it a original car. So if you were going to make something that would be easy to service, blisteringly fast, and just an awesome, raucous, wild ride, as much as you guys might not like it, the best option for a car like this, if you want to go fast and be reliable, is GM LS engine. I know, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to believe it. My Marine buddy, Chris, who built a 300ZX and put an LS in it, he's probably laughing at me right now, even though I know he's looking at a Corvette, might as well. It would work really well. You do individual throttle bodies, and you can make a ton of horsepower, be great. Other things that would fit are Porsche flat sixes. You could get a rotary engine in there, and generally things of that length, but you're really cramming it up in there. And I'm not, with this build, I want to build a race car, something really cool. I'm not trying to pretend to have a Countach. If I really wanted a Countach that badly again, I'd figure out how to save up and invest and work hard to go buy one. But I don't really want to because they're not what I want anymore. So I got to find something cool to put in there. But I really wanted to teach you guys that just so you have a better idea of what goes into doing actual engine swaps or builds in cars like this, which are just unusual things, and the fact that there's a lot of interesting configurations. And I know some of you are going to start looking at, well, if you got a Viper engine, you could have a 256 and put a transfer case from an all-wheel drive and have reverse differentials. Yeah, you can do that stuff. But then you also have to think of cost, complexity, and will it physically fit? And even if it does physically fit, are you going to be able to cool it? Is it going to be obnoxious? Is the car going to be balanced well? Is there going to be room in the cockpit to drive it well? These are all things that come into consideration of the engineering constraints doing a project like this. So I'm going to throw the hood back on this. In the next video, we talk about the Jabberwock Jackwagon. You're going to see the body. I'm really excited. It's going to come in. I think you guys are going to lose your minds. I hope you do, because I lost my mind when I found out I could do this. So I'm going to put the engine and transaxle out, and then in the future, we're going to time lapse it. I'm going to like the Little Caesars commercial for pizza in the 80s, and they're like, what am I gonna do with the second box? And the guy's like, ever heard of origami? And then when he's done, the guy's like, what's that? And he said, it's a pterodactyl. Okay, I know, I'm crazy, but you came to this YouTube channel, and I'm gonna deliver. So that's it, guys. That's up with engine swaps. This is not the Jabberwock. This is gonna go up on the shelf for a future race car build. I really love it. It's gonna be awesome, but I just scooped it up when I could. We're gonna do the Jabberwock. The Indy car's coming down for some Genius Garage students to get to swap an engine and hopefully drive it. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and I look forward to see you guys next time. Very cool thing happening right now at the Packard American Motor Company. They're debuting their very first watch. This is the 1899 Model A. It's a mechanical automatic movement with a beautiful stainless steel case. All the parts are made in Switzerland, and it's assembled right here in the United States. If you happen to have a Packard, you can get your serial number engraved right on it, but you guys need to go to packardamerica.us. This particular watch is mine. I'm looking very forward to wearing it more. It's frankly very comfortable, one of the best watches I've ever had. But this one's mine, not yours. You can't have it. Get your own. packardamerica.us.